the wind whispered secrets through the tall grass as the sun dipped low behind the distant hills, casting golden shadows across the sleepy town of Brookmere. Birds fluttered from tree to tree, chirping their final songs of the day, while the scent of warm earth and honeysuckle filled the air. On the edge of the woods, where the moss grew thick and fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns, a girl named Elia crouched low behind a tree stump, heart pounding, eyes wide. Something was coming. The leaves rustled, not from wind this time, but from footsteps soft, steady, too quiet to be an animal. Elia held her breath. Then, as the twilight deepened, the air shimmered, just for a moment, like heat rising from a summer road. In that shimmer, a shape began to form, tall and cloaked in gold, yet not solid. Almost invisible. Elia blinked. The shape vanished. Not a sound remained. Only her own thudding heartbeat and the whisper of the woods. Back at home, the windows glowed warm with light. Her little brother's laughter echoed faintly through the open door, and the smell of carrot stew drifted from the kitchen. Her mother's voice called out for supper, calm and ordinary, as if the world hadn't just flickered into magic. But Elia knew. This was no trick of the eyes. The shimmer had happened before, always at dusk, always in the woods, and every time it left behind a single silver leaf where it had stood. Elia reached forward and picked it up gently. Cold to the touch, it glowed faintly in her palm. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she would find out. And maybe, just maybe, she would finally learn the truth about the father she could barely remember, the one her mother never spoke of, the one from her dreams, who wore a crown made of stars. That night, as the stars blinked open across the velvet sky, Elia lay awake beneath her patchwork quilt, the silver leaf hidden under her pillow. The room was quiet except for the gentle ticking of the wall clock and her brother Lark's soft snoring from the bed across the room. Moonlight spilled through the window, casting shapes that danced like quiet ghosts on the floorboards. Elia's eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling, her thoughts spinning like windmills. She remembered the dreams, the ones she used to have as a little girl. In them, she walked through a forest, bathed in blue light, where deer spoke in riddles and the trees whispered her name. At the heart of the forest stood a man cloaked in gold, his face blurred like sunlight through water. He would kneel before her, place a glowing crown on her head, and whisper words she could never remember upon waking. Then she would always hear the same soft echo, "You are not just a girl of this world. You are a child of two realms." The dreams had stopped for a while, but now, the shimmer, the leaf, they had returned. The next morning, Elia slipped out of bed before the sun had risen. She dressed quickly, tucked the leaf into her coat pocket, and tiptoed past her mother in the kitchen, who was humming softly over a bubbling kettle. She left a note beside the bread box that simply said, "Gone to the woods, back by breakfast." Then she ran. The woods felt different at dawn, quieter, like they were holding their breath. Mist hung low among the trees, and the air was cool with dew. Birds stirred on their branches but hadn't begun to sing yet. Elia moved carefully, her boots crunching softly on the damp leaves. She returned to the spot where she'd seen the shimmer, the same hollow near the creek where mushrooms grew in perfect circles and the trees arched above like a cathedral. She knelt and placed the silver leaf on the ground. At first, nothing happened. Then the wind shifted. A hush fell over the trees. The leaf began to glow, brighter than before. Slowly, the ground trembled just a little, and from the roots of the oldest oak, a shape began to rise. It wasn't a man this time. It was a door. Made entirely of woven branches and bound with silver ivy, the door stood tall and round, pulsing faintly with light. There was no handle, just a small knot at its center that seemed to watch her, waiting. Elia's heart raced. She reached out, pressing her fingers to the knot. At once, the door melted into mist, and the world changed. She stepped into a place she had never seen, but somehow already knew. The sky here was not blue, but deep violet, filled with floating lanterns that drifted like glowing jellyfish. Trees stretched impossibly high, their bark lined with gold, their leaves shimmering like glass. Creatures with wings and antlers, hooves and scales, peeked from behind blossoms the size of umbrellas. A river of silver light flowed gently through the land, and the air hummed with music that had no words, only feelings. Elia stood frozen in wonder. A voice came, not loud, Not from any one place, but inside her chest, like a memory. Welcome home, child of the in-between. She turned and saw a figure standing just beyond the flowering trees. He was tall and robed in moonlight, though the edges of his form were blurry, as if the world couldn't quite hold him still. A crown of stars shimmered above his head, and in his eyes was the soft weight of many lifetimes. Elia didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat was tight, with something between awe and longing. The figure reached out a hand, not solid, but steady. You are brave to come, little one. She stepped forward. Are you... She began to wonder, but the answer was already there. Yes, I am your father, the invisible king. He knelt before her, just like in her dreams, and touched her forehead gently. You are the Lightborn, child of earth and ether. You carry the breath of both worlds. Elia blinked, and suddenly, images spilled through her mind, memories that weren't hers alone. Her father standing beside her mother beneath a sky of falling stars, a palace hidden within clouds, a war between shadows and light. A promise made to keep Elia safe in the human world, hidden until the time was right. That time was now. The king stood, his form flickering like flame in the wind. There is danger coming, Elia. Something has broken through the veil between the worlds. It hunts the Lightborn. It hunts you. Elia shivered, though the air was warm. She didn't feel like someone special. She felt like a girl who sometimes got scared of thunderstorms and forgot where she put her school shoes. But the silver leaf had called her, and the door had opened. And her father was real. The king turned and began to walk. Come, there is more to know. She followed him through a grove where the trees whispered in voices that sounded like lullabies. They came to a pool of still water that showed not reflections, but memories. Elia leaned in and saw her own face, younger, playing in her backyard with her mother. Then the image shifted. Shadows crept through the woods near their house. Eyes glowed in the dark. A creature stepped into view, a beast made of smoke and thorns, with no mouth and too many eyes. It slithered toward the light of the house, but stopped at the edge of a ring of stones. Your mother has kept you hidden well, the king said gently, but the creature remembers your scent now. The protection will not hold much longer. Elia looked up at him, her chest tight. What can I do? He placed a small orb of light into her hands. It pulsed like a heartbeat. You must return and place this in the heart of your home. It will awaken the guardian that sleeps beneath your hearth. The guardian will protect your family while you grow strong enough to face the shadows yourself. Elia nodded, not because she felt ready, but because she knew she had to try. The king touched her hair gently, and for a moment, his face became clearer. He looked like her a bit around the eyes, a bit in the smile. I am always near, though you may not see me. The bond of light is never broken. Then the wind rose, the trees shimmered, and the world folded in on itself. Elia found herself kneeling once more in the hollow by the creek. The silver leaf now crumbled to dust beside her. In her hands, the orb of light still pulsed, steady and warm. Above, the sun had risen fully. Birds sang. The normal world had returned. But Elia knew nothing would ever be quite the same again. She had seen the world beyond the veil. She had met her father, the invisible king, and something inside her had begun to wake. That evening, as twilight brushed the rooftops of Brookmere, Elia stood at the threshold of her home. The orb of light clutched tightly in her hands. It glowed softly beneath her coat, a hidden star against her chest. Inside the house, everything was the same, lark building towers with wooden blocks, her mother stirring soup and humming, the scent of rosemary and carrots filling the air. But the shadows outside had changed. The wind blew colder now, sharp and searching. Somewhere beyond the hedges and tall grass, something watched. Elia could feel it, its hunger, its patience. It waited just beyond the edges of light, curled in the spaces between heartbeat and silence. The orb pulsed gently, as if it sensed it too. She stepped inside, closed the door, and locked it. Her mother looked up from the stove, smiling in the warm glow of the kitchen lamp, but paused when she saw Elia's face. There was a silence between them, then brief, but deep, as if they both understood something unspoken. Her mother's eyes, gentle and tired, flicked to the pocket of Elia's coat. She gave the smallest of nods. Aelia moved quickly. She knelt beside the fireplace, which hadn't been used since last winter. She cleared away the kindling and old ashes, exposing the smooth stone floor beneath. Taking a deep breath, she placed the glowing orb at the very center and stepped back. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the hearthstone shuddered. A crack formed across it, not a break, but a seam, as if it had always been meant to open. Light spilled upward, golden and swirling, and the orb sank slowly into the ground. The crack widened. A soft wind rushed through the house, not cold, but strong rustling curtains and papers, setting the wooden blocks clattering to the floor. Lark squealed in surprise and clutched a blanket. Her mother stepped protectively between them, watching. From the light, a figure emerged. It wasn't tall or grand like the king. This figure was squat and round, made of stone and flame. It had gentle, glowing eyes and leafy antlers. It looked almost like a bear carved from the heart of the earth. It blinked once, deeply, then bowed its great head toward Elia. The guardian had awakened. At that moment, the wind outside died completely. Then came the silence, the kind of silence that makes the hairs on your arms rise, a stillness too deep for safety. And then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just 3 slow, heavy taps at the front door. Elia turned, heart thudding. The guardian stood still, its body humming faintly, ready. The knock came again. Her mother moved toward Lark, pulling him close. The room seemed to hold its breath. Elia stepped forward. She opened the door. There was no one there. Only darkness. No stars. No moon. Just a wall of shadow, as if the night itself had thickened into something alive. Then from the blackness, 2 eyes blinked open, colorless, glinting like wet stone. No face, no mouth, just those eyes, watching her. The creature from the pool's vision, the shadow beast. Elia stepped outside. The guardian rumbled behind her, stepping into the doorway, heat pulsing from its form. The creature didn't move. It seemed to study her, scenting the air. Elia's knees shook, but she stood tall. She thought of her father, of his warmth, his words. She remembered the light in his eyes and the way he'd said the bond could never be broken. She held that memory like a lantern in her heart. The shadow creature stepped forward, slow, its limbs curling like smoke. With each step, frost spread across the ground. Elia's breath came in puffs. Her hands trembled, but she did not run. The guardian let out a deep growl. Flames rippled across its stone shoulders. Still, the creature came. And then Elia saw it. In the frost spreading toward her feet, there was a line it could not cross. A thin circle of golden moss and silver pebbles, the old boundary ring her mother had made years ago, when Elia was just a baby. The protection still held. Barely. The creature stopped at the edge, twisting, searching. It let out a low, shivering hiss, a sound like branches snapping under ice. Elia stepped closer, just to the edge of the ring. The guardian moved with her. She spoke then not with her mouth, but with her light. She imagined her voice as a beam of warmth, reaching out, pushing back the cold. "This is my home. You cannot have it." The creature snarled, rising tall like a wave. The guardian roared. A blast of golden flame shot forward, not to harm, but to force the creature back. The light struck the shadow, which screamed not loudly, but with a dry, scratching sound, like wind howling through broken things. It retreated slowly, unwillingly melted into the dark. And then, silence. Elia stood shaking, the heat from the guardian keeping her upright. The night seemed to breathe again. A few stars reappeared above the trees. The wind returned, gentler now, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. The door closed behind her with a soft click. She turned. Her mother was kneeling with Lark, tears in her eyes. Not from fear, but from something older. Relief, pride, love. The guardian stepped back to the hearth, curling around the glowing stone where the orb had vanished. Its eyes blinked once, and it began to fade, becoming part of the fireplace once more. Just before it disappeared completely, it looked at Elia with a soft hum of approval. She whispered thank you with her heart. The fire crackled to life. Warmth filled the room. That night, Elia sat beside her mother on the couch. Lark had fallen asleep on her lap. Outside, the shadows no longer lingered at the windows. The circle of protection held strong. The light within their home burned brighter than ever. Elia touched the pocket where the silver leaf had once been and knew her journey wasn't over. But the first battle was won. She had faced the dark. She had stood her ground. And she had not stood alone. In the days that followed, the world outside returned to its gentle rhythm, birds nesting in the hedges, bees humming lazily among the flowers, and clouds drifting across the blue sky like floating castles. To the people of Brookmere, nothing seemed out of place. Children played in the park, old men watered their gardens, and dogs barked at squirrels, as if the world had never held a shadow darker than dusk. But within Elia's home, the air was different now. Not heavier, not darker, just more awake. Every morning, the hearth gave off a warmth that was deeper than fire. The guardian no longer showed itself, but sometimes Elia would hear a soft breath from within the stone, or catch a faint glow in the corner of her eye when she passed the fireplace. Lark had started leaving small drawings there, pictures of glowing bears and leafy antlers, sometimes with a starry crown perched above. He never asked questions. Somehow, he simply understood. Elia's mother spoke more now, not just about chores or meals, but about the past. In the quiet hours of evening, she would sit beside Elia and speak of the hidden world, of the old promise she had made with the invisible king, and of the light Elia had been born carrying. Her voice was soft, her eyes far away, but when she spoke of the king, her lips curved into a smile that held both sorrow and joy. Elia listened. She asked questions. She learned. She learned that her father had not left them, not in the way she'd always believed. He had returned to the Etherlands to protect the borders between the realms, to hold back the shadows that had begun to leak through when the veil had first weakened. He had become invisible not by choice, but by sacrifice. He had done it for her, for all of them. That knowledge settled inside her like a seed, quiet but strong. Some nights, Elia would sit beneath the stars in the backyard, holding her knees and staring up at the sky. She didn't cry, not exactly, but her eyes would fill with something soft and full, something like longing. She would imagine him there, just beyond the clouds, cloaked in gold, watching. And once, only once, she saw the shimmer again. Just for a second. A flicker of light between the trees. She didn't chase it this time. She simply smiled. As summer deepened, something else began to change in Elia. Not her hair, not her eyes, not even her voice, but a feeling inside her like a flame that had been lit and now needed tending. She began to notice things she hadn't before, the way the leaves rustled when she asked the trees to hush, how the birds would pause their song when she stepped outside in the morning, how her shadow sometimes glowed faintly when the moon was full. She began to understand that the light within her wasn't just something to protect, it was something to grow. And so, she began to train. Not in secret, not in grand battles or wild magic, but in quiet moments. She walked the woods barefoot, learning the names of every tree. She listened to the wind and tried to hear its stories. She stood by the creek at dusk, holding her palms open, asking the light to rise. Sometimes, it did. Her mother taught her old lullabies in a language that made the stars tremble. The guardian taught her how to feel with her whole heart, to know when danger was near, even in silence. And the dreams returned. In her dreams, she stood in the Etherlands again. The lanterns floated above her, and the trees bent low to listen. The invisible king would appear, never speaking, but always watching with warmth in his eyes. Each dream left behind a gift, a feeling, a memory, a bit of knowing. Elia kept a journal beside her bed now. She filled it with sketches and thoughts and words she didn't fully understand yet. She wrote down the dreams. She wrote down what she learned from the wind and the water. She called it her book of light. One day, she would share it with others, like her. Because that was the final truth the king had left her, with not all children of the light were born in castles or forests, or under stars. Some were born in quiet towns, in little houses with creaky floors and garden fences. Some didn't even know who they were yet. But they would, one day, and when they did, Elia would be ready to help them. Until then, she would grow. One evening, as autumn crept toward the trees and the air smelled of cider and turning leaves, Elia stood on the edge of the woods once more. She was taller now, though only by a little. Her eyes shone with something old and new all at once. She held another silver leaf in her hand, this one freshly fallen. It hadn't shimmered in the sky or appeared by magic. It had simply drifted from the branch above and landed at her feet. Still, she knew what it meant. It was time to return. Not forever, just for a while. To learn more. To prepare. She tucked the leaf into her pocket and stepped into the trees, where the moss grew thick and the fireflies danced like stars. The door would find her, just as it always had, and beyond it, her father would be waiting. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready. For she had come to understand something deep and true. The light inside her had no end. It was not just a gift. It was a promise. And she would carry it forward, always. For she was Elia, daughter of earth and ether. And the invisible king's light would shine through her, wherever she went.